doesn't have the power. Let's break it down.
Well, I really don't think he does, and what's really educated me, Alex, is I'm in the process of finishing my second book by Colonel Fletcher Prouty. And I highly recommend people need to read the Colonel's books. He died in 2001 of June. But if you read Fletcher Prouty's books, one of them is called The Secret Team, and the other one is called JFK. And if you read those two books, it will become very clear that the history you've been taught is not the history of what's happened. And let me make my point here for a moment. Prouty was there. Who Fletcher Prouty was, do you remember the movie JFK by Oliver Stone, of course?
Yes.
He is the Donald Sutherland character. He is the real-life Mr. X, the guy that Costner goes to Washington and talks to him on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and then they sit on that bench, and he lays the whole thing out. Well, in real life, that was Colonel Leroy Fletcher Prouty, Colonel United States Air Force. And for, I think, 11 or 12 years, he was the top man, the liaison between the Pentagon and the CIA. And I can't tell people how much they need to read to understand. And when you read Prouty's books, you will become much more clear on what's happening, because Prouty tells you in the books that the entire Cold War was a setup. That there was a meeting that took place at the end of World War II, right before we technically were going to invade Japan, like Normandy. And then, of course, they dropped the 2 bombs and they didn't have to. But in preparing for that invasion, they moved massive armaments into Okinawa. Well, there was a meeting because Prouty flew in Chiang Kai-shek, and it was between Chiang Kai-shek, who at that time was the head of China, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt. And at that point, it was determined that all wars from then on would be fought in third world countries, that there would be no direct objective that the military could achieve in which to declare victory. Now, look back, Alex, in our history since World War II. Is that not all true?
That is.
It's all true. That's what really resonated with me when I read Prouty's books. I went, oh, my God, the things he said here is exactly what has gone down.
Well, let me be clear.
Wars are fought in third world countries. Oh, and remember them armaments that I told you they put in Okinawa? Do you know what became of those?
No.
They were split in half. Half of them, according to Colonel Prouty, half of them went to Korea and half of it went to Ho Chi Minh. They were setting up for the next 2 wars. Now,
well, Governor,
it follows through with all of this shit, excuse me on the radio, I shouldn't have said that, but all of this stuff in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all of it fits right into what Colonel Prouty talked about.
Well, I'm chomping at the bit here, and I want to sit back and shut up, and you can tell us what you've learned. But this is what's so incredible. I've known you for about 4.5 years now. And the process, you knew about Gulf of Tonkin, you knew about the lies of Vietnam, you were very well informed. You've been visited by the CIA when you were governor. But it's been a process of you reading and researching, and now to see you, I interviewed Prouty, had to be like in 1997. We've been digging around looking for the tapes. And I have read over his work. I've read his first book, not the second one you're talking about. And then you discover that Joe McCarthy was actually right, but he was being used to set up a police state domestically with low-level communists, but as soon as he found out the Pentagon was running everything, remember that was what they said was so absurd, then they set him up and destroyed him and used the term McCarthyism to demonize him, but then it was declassified 7 years ago or 6 years ago that the Russians said, no, it's true, he was right. And then you learn that the whole geopolitical system is a war against individual populations, and there was a deal with the Russians to build up their police state. They would take over half the world. The U.S. would build up its police state and military system and take over its other half and go into these black hole wars to then militarize a cadre of men to come back and take over the domestic country itself. And now you're researching that, Governor. It's so exciting.
Well, you know, the thing is now is this, Alex, I have the time to do it now. You know, when you're being a governor or you're governing a state or you're working in that capacity, you don't have time to do any research because your day is full 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just doing your job. And now I don't have that job to do anymore. And living in Mexico like I do for half the year, I read 15 to 17 books every winter down there. And it's amazing how reading can educate you, something I think we're losing track of in this country.
Well, I want to be specific. It's amazing to see your development, and I'm not like on some mountain saying that, because I've noticed your discernment with issues, getting into the whole conspiracy realm. You go right to the best sources, the best documents, the best history, and it's just very exciting, Governor Ventura, to see you with a hit TV show, a best-selling book, and to really be one of the main leaders now of questioning our reality. But I don't want to interrupt. Go back. Give people the name of the book again, because I want to go buy it and read it. Fletcher Prouty, on record, the head of Black Ops between the Pentagon and CIA. He was sent away, to the Arctic when they killed JFK. He talked about how they pulled the security off, how it was a Pentagon Black Ops job. We're going to play a clip from JFK coming up later, but take your time into break with more of what you've learned and how you tie that in to all your other life knowledge.
Well, again, it's a case that, Fletcher Prouty he lived through it, and I enjoy reading what he knows about, and he's an exceptionally bright guy. See, the other thing he shows very clearly, which tells you how Obama isn't really in charge, Prouty shows you that most of the politicians only learn of these events till they're already in motion. They're set in motion by people in the government. People in the CIA at lower, not the high-level positions, but in those secondary positions, they're the ones that move forward on all this stuff, the wars, all the dirty stuff that goes on, so that by the time our elected politicians are briefed on it, this thing's already halfway to life. It's already happening. So our politicians are playing catch-up. And that's who Prouty explains in that book, The Secret Team. That's who the secret team is. The secret team are these right under-level government people who are literally running amok. And there's nobody in control of them. And, the CIA has its own money now and own money sources, so they can basically do anything they want. And our president and the rest of them seem to be powerless to them.
Well, that's what Ron Paul said 2 months ago in a speech. In fact, we'll cue that up. It's about 20 seconds. He said, we've had a CIA coup since the 60s. They're bringing in the drugs. We have a shadow government. And my whole point is we have to come to the point as a nation to realize presidents come and go, but the secret teams run by the big Wall Street banks that set up the CIA rule this country and, by extension, the world.
Yeah, pretty much.
Man.
At least that's the information that I'm arriving at. It's not a nice arrival, but, what can we do? Well, I've been harping on it for about 12 years, Alex. You can start by stop voting for Democrats and Republicans. I don't care who you vote for. Don't vote for them. They're the problem. They're not the solution. And that's, really it gets to that. Then, of course, you have to question, is the voting real? Because with these electronic voting machines, they can be hacked into, so you've got to question whether your votes are actually legitimate even in this country anymore.
Exactly. Let me back you up, what you just said. You take Gulf of Tonkin. I sat through many hours of LBJ at his ranch outside Austin, Johnson City, a couple miles from where I sit. And McNamara is telling him what to do and telling him they just staged the Gulf of Tonkin and that this is what he's going to say at a press conference tomorrow. And the president's almost saying yes, sir, to him. And it's the same thing with Bay of Pigs. They launched that without Kennedy knowing and then blamed it on him when it failed.
Exactly. And you got to understand, too, it ain't McNamara. McNamara's being briefed, too. He probably only learned about it the week ahead of LBJ.
No, that's on the tape. He's saying exactly. He says, these tapes are incredible. He's saying the Pentagon did this. This is what you're going to say.
Yep. And see, he's been briefed. See, Fletcher Prouty said the key to all this are these briefer guys. These guys that the Pentagon has and the CIA have who do the briefings of the politicians. They're the ones who sell the politician on the policy. And it comes from them.
You ought to interview Ray